Okay, welcome back to the third part of One Man's Faith. We were just looking at Rosh Hashanah, which is the head of the year, the first day of the new year for the Jewish calendar, and it's also the Feast of Trumpets, where the trumpet is blown, and it's associated with the last trumpet blast, or the great trumpet blast, which is associated with the taking away or the rapture, okay? The next feast is 10 days from that day, and it's called Yom Kippur. The Yom being day, Kippur, atonement. So Yom Kippur is the day of atonement. In Leviticus 23, verse 26, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, on exactly the 10th day of this 7th month is the Day of Atonement. It shall be a holy convocation for you, and you shall humble your souls and present an offering by fire to the Lord. You shall not do any work on this day, for it is a day of atonement, to make atonement on your behalf before the Lord your God. If there is any person who will not humble himself on this same day, he shall be cut off from his people. That means he's to die. As for any person who does any work on that same day, that person I will destroy from among the people. You shall do no work at all. It is to be a perpetual statute throughout your generations in all your dwelling places. It is to be a Sabbath of complete rest to you, and you shall humble your souls. This is the high holy day in the Hebrew calendar. They are to do no work, and if you don't observe it, you're cut off. If you work on that day, which means if you say, oh, phooey, I forgot to make supper last night, and you decide to make supper on this day, you're gone. God said he will destroy you. That's how important this day is to God. You may say, well, that's not fair. Yes, it is, because they have known what the law is forever. It's not like they're just picking it up for the first time. They know what the law is. They know what God has said. And so he's just saying, listen, this is a very serious day. A very serious day. It happens on the 10th day of Tishri, 10 days after Yom Kippur. For this year, for us, Yom Kippur will happen on the 12th of October, okay? With Tishri happening on the 2nd, this happens on the 12th of October. And as I said just a minute ago, in between the 1st and the 10th are what's called the Days of Awe. It's one of the ongoing themes of the Day of Awe is the concept that God has books that he writes our names in, writing down who will live, who will die, and who will have a good life, and who will have a bad life for the next year. This is Hebraic thinking. These books are written on Rosh Hashanah, but our actions during the days of awe can alter God's decree. So God writes based on what you've done. That's why they have the high holy days in the month before. They give a whole month for you to repent and get right with God, and you get right with God partly by getting right with those that you've harmed in any way, okay? And then so that on Rosh Hashanah, you get written in the book of life, okay? If you're not written in the book of life, then you're written either in the book of death, which means you're going to die that year, or you're written in the book called the book of in-between. You're in between those 2 points. So Yom Kippur has special sacrifices. It's because of the day it is. Also, he says, and it shall be a complete Sabbath, a complete rest. You shall humble your souls. That means you fast. Okay, Yom Kippur is a day of fasting. Now, there are special sacrifices given on Yom Kippur. There's 2 goats are brought to the high priest. They cast lots to determine which goat is what. One goat is for God, is for Yahweh. That is the sin offering, okay? And that goat is slaughtered as the offering. The other goat is the goat for Hazazel, which means removal. It is sent away into the wilderness. We call it the scapegoat. Okay? The high priest, after he is, I believe, after he slaughtered the other goat for Yahweh, he lays hands on this goat and symbolically, however you want to say it, passes the sins of Israel onto that goat. Sound a little familiar? Because that's what happened to Jesus on the cross. God poured all the sins on top of him. And so he puts his hands on the goat, and the goat is sent out of the camp. Jesus was born outside the city. I mean, Jesus was crucified outside the city. And that goat is never to return. Jesus did not return. He died. It's the end. It's the end of sin for that year. Okay? Because all the sins that they've committed have been passed from the high priest, representative of our high priest, into the animal. And the animal is sent out. Normally what they do is they'll take the animal out to a cliff to make sure it doesn't come back. Okay? Jesus was on the hill of Golgotha. God dumped all the sins on top of him. That's why Jesus says, my God, why have you forsaken me? God could not look on his son. The sky turned black. It wasn't a pretty picture when God poured all of our sin onto Jesus. But that's what happened. In Hebrews 9, this is a kind of long, but I want you to get the picture. Now, even the first covenant had regulations of divine worship and the earthly sanctuary. This is Hebrews 9, 1 through, I think, 15. For there was a tabernacle prepared, the outer one, in which were the lampstand and the table and the sacred bread. This is called the holy place. Beyond the second veil, there was a tabernacle, which is called the Holy of Holies, having a golden altar of incense and the Ark of the Covenant covered on all sides with gold, in which there was a golden jar holding the manna, Aaron's rod which budded, and the tables of covenant. All right, so he's giving you the picture of the tabernacle. The tabernacle was in two sections. There was I think it was a 10 by 15 section that is called the holy place. It had the menorah, which is the lampstand. It had the showbread, and constantly the priests were going in there, fixing the candles, because it was to be 24/7. It was to light and give forth light into that place. The showbread was 12 cakes, unleavened cakes that were there to symbolize the tribes of Israel. And beyond this, it was a thick veil. I believe the veil was 6 inches. It was a thick veil. Beyond that was called the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant sat. And this indicates that the altar of incense was also in the Holy of Holies. I'm not sure how they managed that or why Paul thought this, but inside the ark was the 10 Commandments, the tablets of commandment, Aaron's rod, that was a stick that budded and even gave forth fruit, if I remember correctly, and a jar of manna. Okay? All right, now, let's see, holy jar of manna. Okay, and above it were the cherubim. This is on the top of the ark, where cherubim of glory overshadowing the mercy seat. There was I don't know whether it was just an actual seat or whether it was just an area between the two cherubim. There's a cherubim on one end, a cherubim on the other end, and they faced inward, and their wings went out over and covered this area called the mercy seat. Now, when these things have been prepared, the priests are continually entering the outer tabernacle, performing the divine worship. But into the second, only the high priest entered once a year, and without taking blood, which he offers. Oh, not without taking blood. Yeah, he had to enter it taking blood. And let me see. I'm not going to read all this because I'm about out of time for this section. But it says in verse 11, when Christ appeared as a high priest for the good things that come, he entered through the greater, more perfect tabernacle. There's a tabernacle in heaven. That tabernacle is going to come down, okay, when the millennial period starts. Not made with the heavens, that is to say, not of this creation, and not through the blood of goats and calves, but through his own blood he entered the holy place once for all, having obtained eternal redemption. For if the blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of heifers sprinkling those who have been defiled sanctify for the cleansing of the flesh, how much more will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without blemish to God, cleanse your conscience from dead works and serve the living God? So you see, he's saying Jesus' blood and going into the tabernacle, which the one we had on earth was a replica of. He went into that tabernacle with his own blood as the ultimate sacrifice, the ultimate atonement. Okay? The atonement and the end of all sin is coming. And it's going to happen on the Day of Atonement. In other words, the Day of Atonement is going to be associated with the end of the 7-year tribulation period. Okay? The end of the 7-year tribulation period. All right. So, it's now time for our last break. And so let's go ahead and take that, and I'll be right back.